This week we're going to be adding and subtracting fractions, and we're going to be adding and subtracting a lot of fractions. So what I wanted to do with you today is start out with a model, and then we're going to go from the model to actually just doing it with pencil and paper by the end of the week. So I'm hoping you're excited about that. I really am. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to make a model with your squared paper of what 3 1/3 would look like. So I'm going to write over here, I'm going to write 3 1/3. And then over here, I want you to create what you think 3 1/3 would look like. And what I'd like you to do is draw around the squares with your pencil or your marker to show what 3 wholes and 1/3 would look like. And then what I'll do is I'm going to demonstrate that as well. I'm going to do it with math tiles just because I think it shows up on the video better. So you can kind of see, if we were in class, you'd all have these math tiles to do this with. So here's my first 2 wholes, right? And they're divided into 3 equal parts, but when you put them together, they're 1 whole, okay? So now I need 3 1/3, so I'm not quite finished yet. Here's my 3, and then this one is going to be demonstrated or shown just like that. It would be 1 out of 3. So on your paper, what you could be doing is you could just draw a picture like this. So this would be 1 whole, and it shows the 3 parts, right? Here's a second whole, and then a third whole. So this is the picture you could have on your paper. So hopefully you understand that and get the hang of how to do that. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to draw another model of 2 1/3. Okay, so I'm going to write 2 1/3 kind of close together, and I'll tell you why later. But go ahead down here and draw 2 1/3. And while you're doing that, I'm going to kind of set up on a piece of paper I haven't written on. So set everything back up the way it was. So our next one that we're doing is 2 wholes and 1/3. So here's my 2 wholes, and here's 1/3. And I am really hoping you can see this little 1/3. I'm going to put it up there. Okay, so now what we're going to do on the right hand side is we're going to write, if you haven't written this yet, go ahead and write 3 1/3 plus 2 1/3 . And I'm going to do it with my tiles, and you can also do it with yours if you want to just draw an arrow as to what you crossed out or changed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 2/3 right here and put them together, because when we add, we put things together, we combine them together. So now what I have left is I have a mixed number for my answer. I have wholes and I have parts, and so my final answer is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2/3. Okay, and if we're just looking at this mathematically, you could say 1/3 plus 1/3 equals 2/3, and 3 plus 2 equals 5. So that's a model of what we're going to be doing, and what we're going to do next is we're going to do it in a more mathematical way. So I'm going to put those back where they belong. And what we're going to do is I'd love you to have your notebook where you can write notes if you have a math notebook, so that you can refer back to what we're doing today. If you are trying something out at home during independent practice and you get a little confused, you can go back to this notebook where we're going to be writing down a strategy for you to solve the problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this word problem out loud to you, and then we're going to use a strategy. And this strategy I'm just going to call method number 1. So in your notebook right now, what I'd like you to do is just write method number 1. Okay? And what method number 1 is it takes the problem and turns it into 2 separate problems, and I'll show you how we do that after we've read this problem. This says, Alfredo picked 2 3/4 pounds of peaches from the tree in his backyard. He gave 1 1/4 pound to his neighbor, Madeline. How many pounds of peaches does Alfredo have? So I'm going to read it a second time. You probably can't read this super well, so I'm going to read it again. I always like to read word problems several times just so I'm really clear that I have the answer or the understanding of how to get the answer. Alfredo picked 2 3/4 pounds of peaches from the tree in his backyard. He gave 1 1/4 pounds to his neighbor, Madeline. How many pounds of peaches does Alfredo have? Now, I know there's a lot of you out there who already have figured out the answer to this, which is awesome. But what we're learning right now is the method. So I want you to stick with me on the method and write down what this method is, okay? So what you're going to do, I'm going to move this out of the way just so you can see my whiteboard. What I'd like you to do is write down 2 3/4 minus 1 1/4, because that is the problem that we're trying to solve. How many peaches did he give to Madeline? So this method is where we separate this into 2 separate subtraction problems. We're going to subtract 3/4 minus 1/4 and get an answer, and we're going to subtract the whole numbers 2 minus 1 and get an answer. And when we have both of our answers, we will combine them, and that will be our final answer. So 3/4 minus 1/4 is 2/4, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So our final answer is 1 1/4. And this strategy is a good strategy. It works a lot of the time. When it doesn't work is when the numerator down here in the lower number, the smaller number, is bigger than the numerator on top, which leads us to method 2. Okay, so what I would like you to do is finish writing this down. If you need to pause and get caught up, that would be fine. And then I'm going to move on to method 2. And I'm also going to show you how I'd like you to write your answer for this problem as well. So when you do word problems, as you know, you need to write a sentence for your answer. And what I would like you to do is reread the question. How many pounds of peaches does Alfredo have? You take that question and put it into a statement. Alfredo has pounds of peaches. And you can go ahead and fill in our answer. Okay, 1 2/4. Did anyone write 2/4 differently? You could have written this as well, 1 1/2, right? Because they mean the same thing. Okay, next word problem. I'm just going to read this one out loud to you, so I want you to listen really well. Juan had 4 1/4 pounds of candy. He donated 1 3/4 pounds to the food bank. How many pounds does he have left? So Juan had, let's see, I'll back up. Let's write this up at the top. Method 2 I love doing word problems, so I get kind of excited and jump right in. Okay, so Juan had 4¼ pounds of candy. He donated 1¾ to the food bank. How much does he have now? So this is a really good example of where you can't say 1 minus 3, right? You can't do that because 1/4 is smaller than 3/4. So you can't take 3/4 from 1/4. So what this method is going to have us do is it's going to have us turn each of these mixed numbers into improper fractions. And that's why we started the day with remembering how to do that, because this strategy is really helpful when this number is smaller than this number, and you need to be able to do that quickly. So this strategy, and I want you to go ahead and draw this picture with me. So 1 whole is 4/4. Does everyone agree with that? So one of these wholes equals 4/4. So what you need to calculate in your mind is how many fourths are there in 4 wholes? Does anyone think, is anyone thinking of a multiplication problem they can do? You can think about 4/4 in 1 whole times 4 wholes altogether, and you can get 16, right? Because there would be, this would be 2 wholes, 4, 8, 2 more wholes, 12, 16. So we have 16/4 just in 4 wholes, and then we're going to add this other one right there because we don't want to forget about it. And we're going to call this fraction, this mixed number, an improper fraction that looks like this, 17/4. So 4 times 4 is 16 plus 1 is 17. This one, I'm going to draw the model again. We have 1 whole. So how many wholes or parts are in 1 whole? 4. So 1 times 4 is 4, plus 3/4 from this part of the mixed number, and we get 7/4. And now you'll notice that you have a fairly easygoing subtraction problem there, don't you? It's 17/4 minus 7/4. So you're thinking about, what is 17 minus 7? 17 take away 7, what do you think it is? It's 10/4, right? So our answer is 10/4. Now, back to Juan and his candy. How much candy does he have left? Juan would not tell us that he has 10/4, right? He would tell us something different. So what he would tell us is he would put those 10/4 back into a mixed number. So we're going to do that right now as well. Now I had to erase the method, and what I would like you to do is, if you did not get that all written down, I'd like you to go back and freeze the video and write down the method so that when you need to do this type of math problem this week and beyond, you can refer to the notes in your notebook. Okay, so now what we have is 10 divided by 4, and we started out with this. Fraction bar says divided by 10 divided by 4. How many 4s can go into 10 without going over? 2. Very good. What is 4 times 2? 8. Excellent. You are playing along really well. Okay, what is 10 minus 8? It's 2. So again, my numerator is here. So that number goes up above here. And this is my denominator because we've been talking about fourths. So the answer to this math problem is Juan has 2 2/4 pounds left of candy. Today what you're going to be doing for independent practice is you're going to do some pages that practice all of these skills that I reviewed with you today. And hopefully you can do all 3 pages. And if you're confused, look back at the notes that you've taken, because I think you can, those can help you really well. And I'm going to see you next time. All right.